Kunle Adewale, a man once filled with life and ambition, had built a career as a successful businessman in Lagos. He had everything anyone could wish for: wealth, status, and a beautiful home. But 5 years ago, his world crumbled when he lost his wife Adesuwa to a tragic accident. Her sudden death had shattered him, leaving a hollow man behind. Kunle retreated into himself, building walls so high that not even his closest friends could penetrate the fortress he had created around his heart. He became consumed with work, using it as a distraction from the unbearable grief that haunted him. As time passed, Kunle's emotions dulled. His daily routine was mechanical: wake up, go to work, return home, and sleep. The colors of life had faded, and he was fine with that. Emotions were burdensome. Love, to him, was an illusion, a trick that had lured him into vulnerability only to be ripped away. He swore he would never allow himself to feel that way again. It was the invitation to the 10-year high school reunion that triggered something dormant in Kunle. He hadn't kept in touch with most of his classmates since Adesuwa's death, and attending the reunion felt like a strange idea. But the persistence of his old friend, Benga, and a nagging sense of curiosity about his former life convinced him to go. He convinced himself it would be harmless: a few hours of catching up, maybe a drink or two, and then he could return to his quiet existence. The reunion was held at a fancy rooftop restaurant in Victoria Island, with a sweeping view of the Lagos skyline. As soon as Kunle walked in, he was met with nostalgia. Familiar faces, though older and worn by the years, greeted him with warmth. Laughter, smiles, and memories filled the air, but Kunle felt disconnected, as though he was a stranger in a place that was once his home. He was halfway through his second drink when a familiar voice stopped him in his tracks. It was soft, melodic, and instantly recognizable. He turned, and there she was, Chidinma, standing just a few feet away. She looked as beautiful as ever, her brown skin glowing under the dim restaurant lights, and her eyes, those large, expressive eyes, were the same ones he had fallen for many years ago. Chidinma had been his first love. They had dated briefly during their final year of high school, but life had pulled them apart. She went to study law in the UK, while Kunle had stayed back in Nigeria to pursue business. They had lost touch, and when he met Adesuwa, he thought Chidinma was a distant memory. But seeing her now, the old feelings came rushing back with a force that stunned him. Chidinma approached with a warm smile. "Kunle, I thought I'd never see you again." Kunle managed a smile, his heart racing. "Chidinma, it's been ages. You look great." "So do you," she replied, though Kunle doubted it. He knew the years had weighed heavily on him, and he often saw the tiredness in his eyes when he looked in the mirror. But Chidinma's compliment warmed him in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. They began to talk, first casually about the years gone by. Chidinma had returned to Nigeria after finishing her law degree. She was now a single mother, raising her daughter, Ifeoma, on her own after a divorce. As she spoke about her daughter, Kunle noticed a sadness in her eyes that mirrored his own, a weariness that only those who had known heartache could recognize. "It's not been easy," Chidinma admitted, swelling her wine glass. "Raising a child alone in this city can be overwhelming." Kunle nodded, understanding more than she knew. "I can imagine. I lost my wife a few years ago. It's been tough." A silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. They were two people who had known love and loss, standing on the precipice of something uncertain. Kunle felt the walls he had carefully constructed around his heart begin to crack, just a little. The reunion ended, and Kunle and Chidinma exchanged numbers. What began as occasional phone calls quickly evolved into regular meetups. At first they were cautious, both aware of the emotional baggage they carried. They met for coffee, shared stories about their pasts, and slowly began to rebuild the connection they had once shared. For the first time in years, Kunle found himself looking forward to something other than work. He looked forward to Chidinma's laughter, the sound of her voice, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about Ifeoma. But as they grew closer, Kunle felt a familiar fear creeping back into his heart. He was terrified of loving again, terrified of the possibility of losing someone else. The pain of losing Adesuwa had been unbearable, and the thought of going through that again was paralyzing. Every time he felt himself getting too close to Chidinma, he pulled back. He would cancel plans, retreat into his work, and distance himself emotionally. Chidinma noticed but didn't push. She understood what it meant to carry wounds that took time to heal. One evening, after yet another cancelled dinner, Chidinma called Kunle. "I can't keep doing this, Kunle," she said, her voice steady but filled with frustration. "I care about you, but you keep pulling away. I understand that you've been through a lot, but you can't keep running from your feelings. If you're not ready, just tell me." Kunle sat in silence, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He knew she was right. He was running from the possibility of happiness because he was afraid of the pain that might follow. But as he sat there, he realized that his fear was robbing him of something precious. He had been so focused on protecting himself from hurt that he hadn't allowed himself to fully experience life again.